Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. A lot of winnable war moments today. We're going to track this pretty closely. In fact, we're going to have a guy on as a guest to this program who is working to generate a prayer vigil and pastoral support for this. Mississippi has only got one abortion clinic. And a law was passed last year and signed by the pro-life governor, Phil Bryant, who's a strong, staunch pro-life, just as pro-life as Governor Rick Perry is in Texas. Man, I like that guy. Man, I like Governor Perry. He said openly, my goal is to end abortion in the state of Texas. I don't want, that's my goal. I want to end the practice of abortion in my state. I want our teachers to be able to be armed. If local districts want it, great combination, local control. He said, look, I'm not going to dictate to local districts. My philosophy is if local districts would like to see their teachers armed and trained, they ought to be able to do it. I'm going to encourage that. I'm going to support it. I'm not going to mandate it happen. And that's what we believe. That's a conservative philosophy, local control, where the people who have to live with the consequences of those decisions get to make the decisions. But anyway, Governor Bryant signed this pro-life law that says that every abortion clinic, the doctors who do abortions there have to have admitting privileges to an area hospital. So if there's a complication in a pregnancy, in an abortion, the doctor can go with the patient and provide medical care for the patient at the hospital. It's a common sense law. It's good for women's health. Everybody who believes in the best medical care for women ought to support it. Well, the abortionists are bottom feeders in the medical industry. A lot of people don't know this, but they're considered scavengers, the lowest of the low. They have no standing. They have no stature. They have no respect in the medical community because the medical community is about healing. It's not about destroying life. It's about saving life. And the abortion industry about the very opposite thing. So they are despised in the medical community. And these doctors could not get 7 area hospitals. They couldn't get admitting privileges in a single one of these hospitals. Now, the State Department of Health gave them 6 months to satisfy the requirements that they have admitting privileges. That's going to run out on January 11. So this clinic ought to, if the law and self-government means anything, that clinic ought to shut down January 11, and that would make Mississippi the first abortion-free state in the Union. Well, let me find my rundown. Let's go back to some sound bites on the situation down in Connecticut with shooting. Before we do, let's grab clip 11. This is President Obama. And again, remember what the mantra was in 1861? Remember what that was all about? It was about state sovereignty. It was about states' rights. It was about the 10th Amendment. States ought to have the authority to make decisions within their own borders about how these moral issues are handled. People in the South were saying the federal government's got no business intruding into our affairs. This is for the people of our state to decide. This is a profoundly moral issue. This ought to be for each state to decide for itself. That was the mantra in 1861. Here is President Barack Obama. And for Barack Obama, when it comes to marijuana, it's 1861 all over again. Barack Obama has now become the biggest proponent of state sovereignty and the 10th Amendment and states' rights that you have ever met in your life. Let's listen.
The federal government has a lot to do when it comes to criminal prosecutions. It does not make sense from a prioritization point of view for us to focus on recreational drug users in a state that has already said that under state law that's legal.
That's interesting. So the president doesn't want a conflict with the states on this, even though it's the attorney general's final decision.
And I asked him about the fact that when he was younger, he smoked marijuana, and what does he tell his girls? And he says what a lot of parents say, don't make the mistakes that I made.
Well, I'm not going to go there. Just leave it at this, that marijuana smoking, and they've determined this, you start smoking, you smoke a lot of weed when you're a teenager, it will permanently rob you of IQ points. It will damage your IQ, and you never can get those IQ points back. I mean, it bakes your brain, and it destroys a certain amount of your IQ. It's permanently lowered. It gives you memory loss problems later in life and attention deficit later in life. That's why marijuana is a bad idea, and it ought to be contrary to public policy. So anyway, for Barack Obama, when it comes to marijuana, it is 1861 all over again. Now, Joe Lieberman, clip 4, Joe Lieberman saying the same thing that Robert Reich was saying. Remember Jennifer Granholm, man, I just hate it when you have to mess around with the Constitution and those pesky laws and the pesky Constitution when I was a governor, I loved being able to do things without having to go to the state legislature. Can't Barack Obama do the same thing with gun control? Robert Reich says, yeah. He can use executive orders. Congress can't even stop him. Here is Joe Lieberman encouraging Barack Obama to do the same thing.
This is all about trying to limit access to guns by people who shouldn't have them based on their records, and to keep military weapons off of the commercial market. That shouldn't inhibit anybody's right to hunt, target shoot, or even defend themselves with a gun. I think this murder of 20 pure, innocent little children is a tipping point. And so I'm proposing this commission so we don't lose the anger and the hurt that we have now before we really get something done about this. I don't want the commission to be an excuse for not doing something. If the president can do something now by executive order, God bless him.
So if the president can do something without having to consult with Congress, without having to mess with that pesky Constitution and the Second Amendment, God bless him, knock yourself out. So Joe Lieberman's out there saying, hey, what we need here is a commission. And I say, with all due respect, Senator Lieberman, we do not need a commission. We need teachers with guns. That's what we need. We don't need another commission. Here's Chuck Todd, MSNBC. Again, he's talking about the similar issue on the Republican opinion of guns and how it compares with what he thinks are the way things ought to be. Let's listen.
The problem is there's public opinion in general, and there's public opinion in the Republican congressional districts, which is a different America.
Which is a different America altogether. And again, that's the mindset of the the media, that we are these hick, backwoods, Appalachian, inbred Neanderthals, and that's where the people that like the protection of weapons live and breathe. That's a different America than the America of the elitist and the smart people such as himself. Now, here is Don Lemon. This is CNN anchor. By the way, number to call if you want to join the program. Let's talk about anything you want to talk about, as long as it's something we've talked about this week. We're not going to talk about asteroid belts in the Milky Way, but anything else you want to talk about that we've addressed over the course of these last couple of days, you can call 888-589-8840. Now, I want to give you a sneak peek into the brain of a liberal, because as far as liberals concerned, the Constitution is just a meddlesome thing that just keeps getting in the way. And that business about the Second Amendment and that business about the right to keep and to bear arms, to own guns, that's what it means to keep, to have it in your possession, and to bear it, carry it around with you. That's just so antiquated. It is so out of date. We've got to get past that. We've got to get rid of the Second Amendment. We've got to get rid of the Constitution. Here's Don Lemon, CNN. Let's listen.
We need to get guns and bullets and automatic weapons off the streets. They should only be available to police officers and to hunt al-Qaeda and the Taliban.
So only police officers ought to have weapons. Well, what's the response time, average response time for the police? 23 minutes. Had that superintendent in Texas, man, the nearest police station 30 minutes away. You know what the response time is of a 357? 1,400 feet per second. But that's typical liberal thinking. We got to get guns off the streets, and we got to get bullets off the streets. Remember, that's the next thing they're going to do. They're going to say you can have guns, you just can't have any ammo. And I've been talking to people the last couple of days about how scarce some forms of ammo are and how difficult it is to get. And that's, and if the government clamps down on ammo, that's exactly what the Crown did. I mean, that's the shot heard around the world. What were the redcoats doing? What were the British regulars doing? They were trying to confiscate the storehouse of gunpowder. That's what they were going for. They weren't going for the guns. They were going for the ammo. And that's when the shot heard round the world was fired and our battle for our independence began in earnest. Now, here is Chuck Todd, clip 7, talking about what he thinks Barack Obama is going to do in his second term. Let's listen.
We'll see. I mean, I think it's easier to do something like this in a second term. I think he is more likely to expend some capital on this.
So he's going to expend some capital in his second term on gun control. You already heard him say he wants to ban assault weapons. Jay Carney saying he supports a ban on assault weapons. Now, part of the problem with assault weapons is nobody knows what an assault weapon is. Nobody knows what it is. They've got definitions for assault weapons, but you can retool a gun. I mean, they had a definition of assault weapons back in 1994. Engineers spent the weekend just making some minor adjustments on the guns, and all of a sudden they weren't assault weapons anymore. Same gun, it's all cosmetic stuff that makes one gun an assault weapon and another one not. And that ban didn't work at all. They finally let that thing mercifully expire in 2004. Now here's Soledad OBrien, clip 8, going head-to-head with John Lott. Remember, John Lott's the guy that knows more about guns than anybody that ever lived. And John Lott was the one that in the research, he made the point, this is a quote from John Lott, with just one single exception, the attack on Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords in Tucson in 2011, that was in a parking lot. Every public shooting, listen to this, every public shooting with one exception since 1950 in the United States in which more than 3 people have been killed has taken place where citizens are not allowed to carry guns. So that's our factoid for today. With one exception, every public shooting in the United States since 1950 where more than 3 people died has taken place in a setting where citizens are not allowed to carry guns. So yeah, these people might be crazy. They might belong in an insane asylum somewhere, but they're smart enough to figure out where the people are. Let's listen, clip 8, Soledad OBrien, John Lott.
Look, there's one common feature across these attacks. All the ones the president mentioned, you go back to from 1950 at least on, with only one exception, all the multiple victim public shootings have occurred where more than 3 people have been killed, have occurred where guns are banned. We try to make an area safe by banning guns. But what happens is it's the law-abiding good citizens who obey the ban and not the criminals. And rather than making it safe for the victims... But there's more than one thing in common, right? Well, there's more than one thing in common. One thing in common is that somebody has weapons, too, and they go into a place where they should not be with a weapon. So I'd say it's not just one thing in common. They're also armed, often to the hilt, and often with automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons, right? Well, never with automatic weapons, but with semi-automatic weapons, sure, they have those. But here's the point. We only have very tiny areas in the United States which are these completely gun-free zones. And yet, time after time, that's the place these criminals go.
That's the place where criminals go. John Lott says, look, an assault rifle is just like a hunting rifle. The inside guts, they fire 1 bullet, back in 2.